Hello and welcome to Bean's Budget Brewery. I'm your host Bean, and let's get into it. Today's deck is $3 Wild Encounters. If you're a new player, this is probably a good deck to start with. The goal is to put out a bunch of creatures with counters on them and then double them with Biogenic Upgrade. And that's the big play that we have. And if we're going to be playing with +1/+1 counters, we might as well put 4 Swarm Shambler in the deck because it'll help protect us from removal. Aside from all of that, it can get bigger throughout the game. This card is bonkers good, and we can play it turn 1. But of course we also need to draw cards, and with this guy, we can draw a card every turn, and usually it only just costs us 1 or 2 mana. Every turn! But now we come to the core of the deck. Grakmaw, Scourge of the Skyclaves. One of the few legendary creatures who is not a dead card in your hand if you have multiple of him, because if you have a Grakmaw out, and you play a second Grakmaw, then one of them will die, and you will get an XX creature token. And the one that's still around will get a +1/+1 counter, because a creature with a +1/+1 counter on it died. But what exactly are these creatures with +1/+1 counters? Well, since we're going to be doubling them, we want to make sure that the creature has the ability to get more than one. And both of these guys can do that, although Territorial Scythecat is not that good. But at least it has Trample, and in a long game it can get pretty big. Speaking of Trample, Duskshell Crawler gives all of your stuff Trample, and it can put a counter on something. And it can block against aggro, and it's only 1 cent. And speaking of 1 cent, the rest of these cards are also 1 cent. Spider Boy is invaluable against flyers, and in a longer game, he'll come back with 3 +1/+1 counters, and if you double that, that makes him a 7/8. But we're not just doubling counters, we're adding 1 counter, because this is a budget deck, and Smell Fear is a proliferate card that can also be used as removal, and here's some other proliferate cards, but none of those are removal, and Smell Fear is, and we kind of need removal. And speaking of removal, don't you just hate it when your creature gets killed? Well, what if they were just pretending? Feign Death is a great way to keep your creature alive and coming back for more, and if you cast it on Grakmaw after Grakmaw died, or before he died, you know, if you do stuff with Grakmaw, there's a crazy thing that happens. Video coming soon is showing that. But now we need to talk about the most powerful card in the deck, and that is Wildwood Scourge. You can't really play this deck without Wildwood Scourge, because whenever you put a counter on anything, he gets a counter. You put a counter on Grakmaw, you get a counter. If you play a 0/0 that puts a counter on itself when it enters the battlefield, he gets a counter. Lastly, if you want to upgrade the deck, I'd add 4 Harmonize.